So let us get started. All right. So here's here's the thing. Today we're talking about a story that a whole lot of people carry around. And some of them, as my today's new subscribers, Sonia and others have said, and sometimes you don't even know it. Yeah, that's the point of your next chapter and changing your story, right? Okay. So sometimes you people carry this around, whether they know it or not, for years, for decades, for whole life. Okay. And it's the story of I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not experienced enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not successful enough. I'm not blank enough. Or I'm not enough to start the business, have the relationship, make the change, become the person I want to become. And here's what's interesting. None of us were born believing that. Okay. That little baby that just kind of has said hello to the world that wasn't born with that. Okay. Something happened. And there's a story behind that story. And somewhere along the way, here's what we did. We took something that happened to us and turned it into something we believed about us. That is a good write down. Welcome, Julie and Larry and others. We took something that happened to us and turned it into something we believed about us. So today we're going to do two things. We're going to look at three ways that the I'm not enough story gets built. And then we're going to look at three ways we can begin rewriting it, create a better story, and create your next chapter for a much better life. And you're going to have that by the end of this show. Okay. Because we say this every week, because you don't got to spend the rest of your life living inside a story you learned years ago. Part one, how the story gets built. The comparison story. The first one is I'm not as good as them. Ever done this? You look at somebody else's life, career, business, relationship, money, confidence, and then you compare yourself to what you see in them. The problem is it's a rigged comparison. And folks, as much as I love social media has increased that because what happens is we look at somebody's Insta or TikTok or their reel or their video or whatever, and they're showing you their highlight reel while we are here, you know, living a one take life, right? Okay. So it's a rigged competition. Another way to say it is we compare our backstage to their highlight reel. And pretty soon they're doing better than I am because there must be something wrong with me. And eventually I'm not enough. So let me ask you, what evidence, what have you been using as evidence that you're not enough by looking at others? Number two, the qualification story. The second one sounds like this. Doesn't sound like that. It sounds like this. I need to be more before I can. I need more training, more experience, more confidence, more money, more followers, another certification, another course. I need to lose weight first. I need to get everything figured out first. Then I'll be ready. And here's the crazy thing. Every time we get close to that finish line or that starting line, it gets moved or we move it. Okay? There's always one more thing you're going to need before you finally believe you're enough. And here's the trap. If you require yourself to be completely ready before you move, you may never move. Here's another good write down. Got your typing fingers or your, hey, Sally, how are you? And Lorenzo and Michael as well. Like, welcome everybody. Here's another write down. Because confidence doesn't come before we do the thing. Confidence comes because we did the thing. I'll say that again. Confidence doesn't come before we do the thing. Confidence comes because we did the thing. So, the rejection story. Oh, if they didn't choose me, there must be something wrong with me. Maybe somebody left, rejected you, criticized you. You didn't get the job. The relationship didn't work. Maybe somebody you desperately wanted approval from never gave it to you. And then something very human can happen. We take an event and turn it into an identity. Write that down. We take an event and turn it into an identity. I wasn't enough for that person becomes I'm not enough. And those are not the same thing, folks. Somebody's inability to see your value does not determine your value. A rejection is something that happened. I'm not enough is the story you may have written about what happened. Here's the good news. Okay? If a story can be written, it can also be rewritten. And from that, you can build your next chapter and change your life. Okay? So, part two, here's how we rewrite I'm not enough. Step one, separate the event from the identity. Here's where we start. Ask yourself what actually happened. Not what did you decide it meant, what happened. Because I failed as an event. I'm a failure as an identity. I got rejected as an event. I'm unlovable as an identity. I made a mistake as an event. I always screw everything up as an identity. Those are very different things. And to share one I shared with you before from my own life, my mother saying when she was angry, I'm thoroughly disgusted with you was an event, an ongoing event. What I turned it into was I'm disgusted. And I look back on that now, and although it still pops up, I know that's ridiculous. That was said by a very unhappy, hurting, angry woman. Okay? It had nothing to do with me. However, it took me a long time to get past that one. Okay? One describes something that happened. The other tries to tell you who you are. Got that? One describes something that happened. The other tries to tell you who you are. So maybe the first rewrite is simply, this happened to me. It doesn't have to define me. This happened to me. It doesn't have to define me. Number two is collect the evidence. We got a file. We've got an I'm not enough file somewhere. That's a pretty impressively big file. Every mistake, every rejection, every embarrassing moment, every failure, every stupid thing we've ever done. We keep all of it. And it's like we're walking around carrying a giant case file labeled evidence that I'm not enough. Now, saying it out loud like this makes us think, oh, come on. But we do it, don't we? And there's another file. We just don't open it as nearly as often, and we should. I have a few questions. When did you survive something you didn't think you could survive? When did you learn something you didn't know how to do yet? When did you help somebody? When did you solve a problem? When were you scared and did it anyway? When did you keep going when quitting would have been easier? I remember that story. I'd played sandlot tackle football since I could walk, and then went out for a team. And back then, when it was junior high, it was a lot different, and I didn't make the team. Went out again in 10th grade, and I could take you to the place on that practice field where I wanted to quit. I said, no, not this time. Okay. So when did you keep going when quitting would have been easier? When did somebody thank you because you made a difference? That is evidence too. Stop building a case against yourself using only half the evidence or maybe a tenth of the evidence. Now, here's my favorite one of the whole day. Number three, stop asking, am I enough? Oh, well, that's just great, Jeff. Look in the mirror and say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. No, this is not an affirmation. It's a change in story. It's a change in strategy. Okay. Here's the shift I really want you to begin taking today. Instead of asking, am I enough? Let's make the question smaller, much smaller. Ask, am I enough to take the next small step? Instead of, am I enough? Change it to, am I enough to take the next small step? Because you almost are, you almost always are. I didn't intend that alliteration, but you almost always are. Not, am I enough to build the entire business? Am I enough to fix the whole relationship? Am I enough to completely change my life by tomorrow? Am I enough to know exactly how all this is going to work? Forget all that for just a minute. Are you enough to take the next small step? Can you make one phone call? Can you send one email? Can you have one conversation? Can you ask one question, walk through one door, apply, show up, ask for help, say no, say yes? Can you attempt? Can you try? You don't have to believe you're enough for the whole journey. You only have to believe you're enough to take the next small step, and you are. Another way to say it is you don't got to believe you're enough for the whole journey. That's too much pressure. You only got to believe you're enough to take the next small step. And if you're looking at the next small step and that still feels too big, break that next small step into smaller next small steps. That's how you build confidence. That's how you rewrite your story. That's how you create your next chapter. And that's how you change your life. So here is your assignment. Finish this sentence. You can write it down. You can think it. You can type it in the chat if you want. I'm not enough to blank. I'm not enough to blank. Don't clean it up. Don't make it sound good. What's the real sentence? Now take a look at it. And instead of trying to convince yourself that you're suddenly enough for everything that blank represents, just that question is exhausting. And instead of trying to convince yourself that you're suddenly enough for everything that blank represents, ask yourself one different question. Am I enough to take the next small step? And if the answer is no, break that next small step into smaller steps. Some of you are familiar with the phrase, one day at a time. Well, all of us also know that sometimes one day at a time is too big a chunk. How about one afternoon at a time, 1 hour at a time, 10 minutes at a time? Okay, break it down. So when you ask the different question, am I enough to take the next small step? And the answer is yes. There's only one question left. What's the next small step? That's your strategy, not the 37 next steps, not the entire plan, one small step. Because your next chapter doesn't have to begin with some enormous transformation. Sometimes your next chapter begins with one small decision. I'm not going to let that old story make decisions for me anymore. And Mom completely agrees with it. The old story says, I'm not enough to, blank. The new story says, I'm enough to take the next small step towards blank. And then take it. That's how you begin your next chapter. Now, we're going to step back a week for something, and then we're going to step forward a week for something. Stepping back a week, last week we talked about your first or next product and what's your product prevention plan. And then 3 stories on the product production path that can set the whole thing free. Okay. Now, that one hit so hard for everyone, I turned it into a short book, and it's available for you at the following link that I'm going to paste in here into the chat. Beth, my friend, you just joined and we're wrapping up. The good news, Beth, and everyone else, is this replay will be out tomorrow morning. Okay. Here's the link to the book, the short book that came from last week's session. And when I say short, folks, you can read this and act on it in the same day, sometimes in the same hour. All right, Beth, catch the replay. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. All right. So that's stepping back a week. Last week was about what's your product prevention plan and how to get out of that. Created a book all about it, just for you. Um, Very affordable, very short, very doable. Now, step forward a week. Next week is the story behind I need more content. I have to get on that content hamster wheel, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, just to have a chance. So we're going to look at the story behind I need more content, 3 stories that fuel that, and then 3 stories that rescue you from that and makes your life a whole lot easier. Okay. So, as always, folks, thank you for being here. A lot of places you could have been online and you chose to be with us. And that is always an honor, whether you're listening live or on the replay. And as always, go get this stuff. Sometimes it's just get the replay. Sometimes it's listen to this. Sometimes it's join that. Sometimes it's grab the short book. It's only $7 for a short book you can finish and take action on in a day. And as always, folks, be sure to go use this stuff. Beth, so thank you so much for that. So happy to catch you even for a bit. That is a copy and paste that, with your permission, Beth, will show up again somewhere. There we go. Awesome. So, as I was about to say, before Beth so graciously interrupted me, go use this stuff because it flat out works. And you know what? We'll catch you next time.